Hi, church. I know that many of you, if not all of you, have had this situation happen. You type up this rather lengthy but well-worded email to someone, and then you hit the send button, and nothing really happens. You hit the send button, and depending on what web browser you're using or email client you're using, this thinking bubble pops up, or the little circle that just keeps going around and round and round pops up to let you know that it's trying to do something. It's thinking about sending it, but it just hasn't done it yet. And you sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait. And then finally you get this message that says that the function timed out or the email wasn't sent. And now your email's just sitting there idle in your drafts folder as opposed to your sent folder. And then you have to go through that process all over again. And I don't know about you, but I don't want my emails to sit idly in my draft folder, right? I want them to be sent. I know that's a first world problem, but it's aggravating, right? When you want something to be sent, but it's not going. And I wonder if it's like the church, that we are meant to be sent, that God intends for His church to be sent to go, and we sit idly in our pews, not really going anywhere. Now, first of all, wow, I couldn't really decide if that was a really lame sermon illustration or not, so I just went with it, and now looking back on it, I think it is a little lame, but we're going to stick with it anyway. The church is called upon to be a sent people. We're called upon to be a group of people that go. The church is the sent ones. So, okay, what do I mean by that? Well, I want to go back and I want to look at a story in Genesis chapter 12 about Abraham. Now, we've talked about this before. Before he was known as Abraham, he was known as Abram. And he receives this calling from God in Genesis chapter 12. And here's what the calling says. Here's how God calls to him. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing.'" So Abram was told that he would be a blessing and that his name would be made great. Why? Okay, the why is a really important question here, and it usually is a really important question. Why was he told that he would be blessed and that his name would be made great? Why? So that you will be a blessing. God promises to bless Abram so that he can be a blessing to others. Now, here's another important question. When was this going to happen? Right? He says he's going to bless him. He promises to bless him and to make his name great so that he could be a blessing to others. But when is this going to happen? Only after Abram responded to the call to go. Right? Only once Abram responded to his call to leave his country, to leave out of this familiar territory that he found himself in, and to go into unfamiliar territory, right? God promises to bless him, but only after he leaves his place of familiarity and goes into unfamiliar places. And I think this is still the call of the church today, right? I still believe that we are called upon to go and that we will receive blessings, that God will bless us. But here's the deal, church. The blessings that we receive are not an end unto themselves. We receive blessings so that we can be a blessing to others. Not so that we can sit comfortably in our blessings, but so that we can go and bless others. And I wonder if the conditions are still the same. Right? For Abram, when was it going to happen? Only after he responded to the call to go. To leave his places of familiarity to go into unfamiliar places. And so I wonder if the conditions are still the same for us. Could it be that God is calling his church to leave their places of familiarity and comfort so that they can then travel into places of unfamiliarity? Travel into places that are unfamiliar to us. And that's really what this entire series has been about, right? Church outside the box, right? Our places of familiarity and comfort are our pews. It's the four walls that we surround ourselves in when we gather together to worship. It's the building that we gather together in for 2 hours on a Sunday morning to worship. And I wonder, could it be that God is calling us outside of the box? Calling us to leave our places of familiarity and comfort and promising that he will bless us, not so that we can just sit in our blessings and enjoy our blessings, but bless us so that we can go out and bless others who are outside the box as well. This is what I mean when I say that the church is a sent people. The church is a sent group of people. We are the sent ones. You know, Jesus was a sent one, and he was always very aware of his sentness, if you want to call it that. He tells us this in John 17 and verse 18. He's praying to his Father, and as he's speaking to God, he says, "As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world," right? Jesus was always aware of his calling. Jesus was always aware that he was sent. And in this prayer that he prays to the Father, he passes on his sentness to his 12 closest friends, to the apostles, right? As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world, right? The 12, those closest friends of his. And did you know that at its very core, this is what the word apostle means? At its very core, the word apostle in the Greek, it literally means sent one or messenger. As a matter of fact, there are places throughout the New Testament where people are called messengers, right? They've sent a message to someone else. They're called messengers. And it's the same exact Greek word that's used for the 12 that are designated as apostles. Because to be an apostle is to be a sent one. It's to be someone who is sent out into the world. And so Jesus is a sent one, and he passes on that sentness to his 12 followers. He passes this on to them and designates them now as sent ones. And they're sent into the world to talk about the good news, right? To spread the good news of the kingdom. They are sent into the world to serve other people. They are sent out into the world to heal other people, to bless other people, to be a witness in this world, right? Showing others what life in the kingdom looks like, right? They are sent to do this. Jesus is a sent one, and he makes his followers sent ones. Now, I know that the context of John chapter 17 in that prayer is specifically about the 12 men that he designated with that title of apostles, but I believe that that's still truly our calling as a church, right? That just as Jesus passed on that sent nature, right? That mission of being a sent one, just as he passed that on to the 12, I still believe that he passes this on to the church, right? The church is a group of sent people. We are sent ones, and our calling is just like that of Abram's, who was called to leave his country of familiarity and to go into unfamiliar places, and that he would be blessed in that endeavor, but not so that he can just enjoy the blessings, but so that he would ultimately become a blessing to others. Right? God promises to bless us in our going, in being sent, so that we can be a blessing to others. So, There was a time in Israel's history where they were taken from their homeland and sent into exile in Babylon. Now, Babylon was this major power that seemed to always be in conflict with Israel, and we find this period, we call it the Babylonian Exile. Right, the Israelites are taken out of their homeland, taken out of their country. They're sent into exile into Babylon, always to be outsiders, never to be insiders. And called into slavery and different things there in Babylon. And during this time, there's a prophet named Jeremiah who comes onto the scene. And Jeremiah, when he talks about this time of exile, he uses very different language. He doesn't use the language of being taken or being ripped from their homes. No, as a prophet, he was able to reframe the story. As a prophet, he was able to reframe the discussion. And I want you to hear how Jeremiah talks about this time of exile. He's speaking on behalf of God, and he says this: "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." Did you notice how Jeremiah reframed the story? He wanted them to see themselves not as being taken from or ripped from their places of familiarity, their homes, their country, but rather he wanted them to see themselves as sent ones. As sent ones, right? They were not taken from Jerusalem, they were sent to Babylon. They were not ripped from their homes. They were not taken. They were sent there. And why, right? That's the important question. Why would they see it this way? Why is this important for Jeremiah, for them to kind of reframe their narrative? Why would they be sent to Babylon? Well, it was in the text we read. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare, the city's welfare, you will find your welfare. Right? They were sent to be a blessing. Faith reframes our stories. I want you to think about that. Faith reframes our stories. I love what former U.S. Senate chaplain Dr. Richard Halverson once said. He wrote these words. He says, "You go nowhere by accident. Wherever you go, God is sending you there. Wherever you are, God has put you there. He has a purpose in your being there. Christ, who indwells in you, has something he wants to do through you wherever you are. Believe this and go in his grace and his love and power." Right? Faith reframes our stories. Faith reframes our narratives. And I wonder, what would happen, right? What if the very first question that we asked as a church when it comes to making decisions, especially whether it's big or small, what if we reframe the question that we ask, not asking how will this bless us, right? This decision that we're trying to make, whether big or small. What if the first question is not how will this bless us, but rather, what if the first question we asked was this: how will this decision bless our neighbors? How will this decision bless the schools we're trying to serve? How will this decision bless the community that we live in? How will this decision bless those that we are trying to reach? Right? That's the missional question to ask. And we're being challenged to make that our first question, not to ask, how will this bless us as a church, but how will this ultimately bless those that we are trying to reach, right? Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you. So Abram was sent to be a blessing. Israel was sent to seek the welfare of others. Jesus was sent to serve and to seek and to save the lost. The apostles were sent to spread the good news about the kingdom, to serve, to bless, to heal. And as a church, we should still see ourselves in a long line of sent ones carrying on the mission, right? We are the sent ones. We are sent to spread the good news of the kingdom. We are sent to be reconcilers in this world. We are sent to bless and to serve others. We are sent to point people to Jesus. We're sent to show them what it means to love and what it means to have hope in this world. We are the sent ones. And that church is church outside the box. And so we have this tradition that we've started over the last couple of years here at OP Church where we try to close out our service with a benediction. Now, benediction is a long-held tradition in many faith traditions. And there really is a purpose to it. It really is kind of a holy moment. And it's not closing out a service with announcements or closing out the service with a closing prayer or something like that, but rather a benediction is meant to be a word of sending. It's meant to be a blessing upon those who are sent, which is why we've been trying to get back into this tradition here, this long-held liturgical tradition of sending our people with a blessing, because we are sent ones. And so I want us to be reminded of that as we close out this morning, with a benediction, because church, we need to remember that we are the sent ones. So may the Lord bless you as you go. May your light shine bright in the places that you are sent. And may you be a blessing to every person you encounter this week. Have a blessed week.